Welcome to Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the evolving world of sports science. I'm Andrew Rizza, an athlete trainer with decades of experience in professional, collegiate, and high school sports.
And I'm Cameron Roth, an orthopedic surgeon and a consultant for the Chicago White Sox.
In each episode, we'll explore the real-world challenges and opportunities facing today's human performance professionals.
Our hands-on experience is transforming sports medicine and breaking barriers through innovation and teamwork.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast. Today, we have Lukas Siska, professional triathlete and coach, and was the coach for Dr. Cameron Roth in his triathlon training.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Lukas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, Lukas was my coach for my first and only 70.3 half-Ironman, and he's the best triathlete and running coach I've ever had. And he's a wealth of knowledge. He was a state qualifying swimmer, D1 cross-country athlete, then became a professional triathlete. So, Lukas, how would you describe your transition from being a college swimmer, college runner, to a full-time professional triathlete?
Thank you, Cam. To make a long story short, basically my original dream as a kid was Olympics, like kids do. And I tried to go the swimming route, but it became very quickly apparent that, hey, I'm no Michael Phelps, and that dream is never going to fly. But there was a small chance in triathlon. So I actually started off swimming in college my first year, and then I transitioned to running. I transferred schools and everything, and I knew that if I wanted to take triathlon seriously, I really had to develop my running. I walked onto this D1 running program, and from there I was able to kind of learn what it means to be a runner, and I just kind of meshed that with my swim, and then as soon as I finished school, I just went full on into triathlon, and I have on my father's side a Slovakian background, so Slovakia is a much smaller country than the U.S., so not as much competition to get to the Olympics. So I used my Slovakian passport and raced for Slovakia, and was trying to get Olympic points since 2009 all the way up until 2015, where I was kind of going for it. Got the dream was looking like it might happen, but then it didn't quite. I didn't quite make it, and I don't want to sound like I was super close, because I wasn't. But I was on a path that there was a chance, and didn't work out. Gave it my all, and then I kind of transitioned to long distance triathlon racing, and I did that up until 2 years ago.
What's that look like? What's a day-to-day like in trying to qualify for the Olympics, or just being on the professional triathlete circuit?
So like triathlon, there's short course, which is Olympic distance, and then there's long course, and they're kind of different the way it looks. And with short course, with the Olympic route, it's just, it's all about the speed. And I mean, you train massive hours, you're still training, 30 hours a week, but it's just more intense. Whereas the long stuff, you might train 30 hours a week, but you do a lot more, lower intensity efforts and just try to stretch it out a little bit. But you really have to embrace it as a lifestyle for sure.
What's the training schedule? If you give like a basic overview of long distance triathlon, half Ironman, full Ironman, what's a sort of a weekly training schedule looking like?
A typical week may look like, if I break it down into swim volumes and run volumes and bike volumes, you might do around 25 kilometers of swimming. Then you might do the bike, I'll say it in hours, right around 12 hours of cycling. And then you'll probably run right around 50, 60 miles a week. And, you just, those three sports, you have them meshed together. You usually do at least 2 of them per day, sometimes 3. And the more volume you can handle and still recover from is what you go for. So you're trying to do as much as you can and still be able to recover.
Now, this is kind of a 2-pronged question, but I think one of the things is, if you're someone that's interested in doing this type of activity, how do you find the time? And then the second part of that is, with more training comes injury and recovery. So when you were training and when you were going through this process, did you ever have any injuries? And then were those injuries self-treated, or did you see somebody to help you with those types of injuries to recover and get back to the training?
Yeah, no, great questions. To answer the question about time, I think it goes back to you really have to make it a lifestyle, because if you don't make it a lifestyle that you enjoy, enjoy being fit. You wake up, you start with exercise, then you go and get breakfast, and if you're a working person, you go to work. But then at work you're even, you're thinking about that next session, so you're sitting where you can, you're fueling throughout the day, and then that right after work you're gonna go and get another session in, and then you come home and you relax. So it's just kind of really, you have to embrace it, because if you don't love it, then there's no way you can keep it up and do what you need to do. And then in regards to the questions about injuries, oh yes, coming from a swim background and then going on to land, I got every injury in the book because I was over motivated, not paying attention to the body, and I was just I was really fit from the swim world, cardiovascularly. So then I could do maybe more than I should have initially, on like when I started running miles and stuff, and but my body wasn't ready for that, and I got plantar fasciitis, I got shin splints, I got I Achilles tendonitis, all those things that just are kind of typical if you're not careful, and IT band syndrome, and but when you're in your early 20s, you just kind of do dumb stuff and you learn from it, and then eventually over the years and just being smart about things, your body kind of adapts to it. And despite really a lot of mileage and big volume training, it's like your body's almost morphed into being ready for that. And I would say you're even more resilient. And I stopped getting injured after a few years of just being adapted to that. And the only time I'd really get injured is if I do something stupid in the gym and pull something, or if I got hit by a car, which happened several times, then you're injured, but nothing like self-inflicted in terms of from the training.
So when you got injured on the circuit, who were you seeing and who was taking care of you? Was it athletic trainers, doctors, physical therapists, a combination?
Yeah, so when I went and became a collegiate runner, then I had the advantage of having trainers, athletic trainers that were dealing with me, and I literally went from 0 miles a week to a D1 program where they were running 80 miles a week, and I had never run more than like 5 miles in a day. And so all of a sudden I'm trying to run 80 miles a week, which a couple of weeks I could fake it because my cardio was okay. But then all of a sudden, that catches up to you, and I was getting all those injuries I mentioned, and yeah, I had the trainers there and stuff that were really helping me out, and I think I maybe had a year or two where they were just constantly working with me, and then like I said, I adapted a little, and things started to get better.
Now, were there any times where you had injuries that were stress-related injuries that sidelined you for an extended period of time? Was there anything like bone stress-related injuries, like stress reactions, stress fractures, legs or feet that were diagnosed, or was it more or less soft tissue injuries that you were dealing with?
It was, for me, it was more soft tissue injuries. Thankfully, I never did get a stress fracture, or I had a lot of friends that did. That thankfully never happened to me, but I did get sidelined with plantar fasciitis actually for 18 months, just because,
Wow.
again, just being stupid about it, and you're just ignoring it. You can kind of still train, and but then it just got to a point where literally I would be, trying to step on the foot, and it's like the muscles around the foot were just giving out. Like I couldn't even. And so once it got to that point, I was like, oh well, I've got to fix this. And of course, you guys know that it's one of those injuries that you can sit out for a couple months, then come back, and it's almost exactly the same. So the way I was able to finally kick that was just really increasing the mobility in my fascia, and then also I got some custom orthotics that really kind of helped me heal, and I didn't run for literally a year and a half, and then I was able to gradually get back into it. But that was probably the injury that sidelined me the longest.
Do you remember when you were a pro a specific super miserable training day
Yeah,
that kicked your ass?
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Want me to give you an example of it?
I want as many examples as you have.
I'd say maybe one of the hardest days that I used to have is I had the advantage that I train with a lot of really world class athletes, and I used to train with the best swimmer in all of triathlon. His name's Richard Varga, and he's from Slovakia, and we were training partners. And he's just a phenomenal athlete. I mean, you're talking about a guy who can run a 10K in 29 minutes. You know, he can swim like an Olympic swimmer can, and his cycling power was unbelievable. And we used to train together, and we'd train in Slovakia in the winter, and we'd swim 5 kilometers in the morning, and immediately after the swim, we'd go and do like a 10-mile run, 16-kilometer run, and then we take a little break and we do this like 4-hour bike ride, but it'd be like 32 in Celsius, 0 degrees outside, and it'd be damp and wet, and we'd be out there for 4 hours and doing intervals and things, and you'd get back and I just couldn't even turn the doorknob on because my hands were just frozen stiff from riding, and I mean that was just, I think, and to be honest, I don't want to gross your audience out, but like you were so cold on the bike that you just took a leak to keep yourself warm while you were riding, just because you're like, man, this feels so much better than just holding it in and staying cold. So that was kind of the extreme, and those kind of sessions, would happen all the time. But I mean, I have a lot of crazy workouts I've done over the years, but I think some of those cold winter rides with Richard Varga were probably some of the most toughest ones, I'd say.
Holy shit. Yeah, during my St. George, I got off the bike to pee on the side, but maybe I would have won if I just peed my triathlon suit.
Yeah, Cam, don't stop, man. Don't stop, man. You got to keep going.
Keep going, Cam. No one cares.
You left that out of the training plan. Pee your suit.
Yeah, well, if you notice, Cam, in triathlon, the shoes, if you have specific triathlon shoes, they have holes in the bottom, and those are for that. That's for that exact purpose, for it to just kind of run out.
It's good to know.
I'm trying to figure out how 70.3 miles even comes into your brain as being something that you want to try to do.
That's only the half distance, too.
It's unbelievable. So I can't complain when I'm on the treadmill in the basement for 3.5 miles.
Well, you know what? But I can totally feel you because, when I was back, there was a time where I thought, running 5 miles was just crazy. And I think there's something going on in your brain when you start forcing yourself to like, all right, now I'm going to do a 6 mile run, a 7 mile run. And Cam, you can attest to this. I'm sure that, you've done marathons that like that distance, what you originally thought was crazy, somehow you train your brain to think, oh, it's not that big of a deal, and then you find yourself at the end of an Ironman where you just finish the bike and you're like, you have the marathon left, but somehow your brain is like, oh, I'm almost done, and it's just kind of like this evolution of how, I don't know if there's like physically something that happens in your brain where it just rewires itself, but after a while, nowadays, 5 mile run, you think of it as just an easy recovery day,
Now, what are some of the advice that you give to your athletes when it comes to the mental piece? Like you just mentioned, like thinking, hey, this isn't so bad. I can get through this. I can get to the next stage and get through that. Can you comment a little bit on the mental component of coaching and how you help your athletes get prepared for training when you're coaching them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, first of all, and what I like to tell a lot of my athletes is that nobody realizes what they're actually capable of. I think everybody has so much untapped potential, and we put these limitations in our mind that like, I can't do that. That's just insane. That's crazy. Or a lot of people that I work with at the beginning, they'll think that certain volumes are just insane, but when in reality, it just depends what environment you're in. There's 11 and 12-year-old kids that are, for example, in the swim world, that are swimming 8 to 10 kilometers a day, and they just think it's normal. And it's just kind of like, you got to realize that you can do big things, and to initially get over the side of like, oh, that's, if you're in a long distance race, you just got to break it down in your mind and kind of be in the moment, and you can kind of get into this flow state where time just kind of goes differently, and you can do it. The bottom line is that you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about in the rehab space on the mental component. So for us, it's always that when we're dealing with athletes and injuries, like for instance, when you had your plantar fasciitis, you must have had that in the back of your mind, like, hey, when I go to step my foot again, is it going to hurt? So it's trying to kind of disassociate the injury from the mental piece, or try to think that, hey, it's going to be okay to get back to that next level for me. So I think I know a lot of the athletes that we deal with, a lot of the patients that we treat, it's the last like 10% of that for them is just getting over that hurdle. It's them being able to step back onto the field and know that, hey, it's okay for me to do this. I've done all the work. Now it's time for me to get back to action. So
Exactly.
it's one of those things I think people have a hard time doing, but we have to try to coach them as best we can.
No, that's a great point. Like, I think, and in the times that I've been injured, I think you kind of go through these phases, don't you? Like in the beginning, you kind of deny it. At least I was kind of denied that I'm injured, and then I keep going and make it worse. And then once you finally accept that, hey, I'm injured, I've got to do something about this. And I always try to tell myself that, okay, like I've got to stop. I'm not, if whatever I lose in terms of my performance right now, I'm going to get it back way more once I'm healthy. And my main goal right now is to just get healthy. And I know that if I'm healthy, then I can get to where I was before and beyond. And you kind of just tell yourself that, and I think if you stay positive, then I think it even helps you heal faster. I mean, you guys probably know a lot more about that than I do, but I just on myself, I found that if I was positive that I'm going to get better, it just kind of seemed to go quicker.
So, Lucas, when you're training, how do you know if you're just tired versus being completely overtrained?
Oh, that's a great question, and I'm sure we talked about that, Cam, back when we were working together. I think one of the biggest things as an endurance athlete that you really have to develop is knowing when you're functionally fatigued and when it's non-functional fatigue. And what I mean by that is when you're training a lot, you have fatigue and you're tired, but you can still achieve what you need to do. For example, when me and Cam were working together, Cam knows that, certain days we'd have as what I call key days. And those are where we really move the mark, where we're doing a little bit higher intensity. And those are kind of the most important training days during the week. And you might have some fatigue going into that, but you warm up, you attempt it, and a lot of the times, if your training setup is correct, you'll be able to achieve that quality session once you start doing it. And that's what I would call functional fatigue. It's like you're tired going in. Once you warm up, though, you're able to achieve those uh, quality intervals. Whereas when you have non-functioning fatigue, you're tired going in, you warm up, you attempt the first rep, it feels like garbage, and then you attempt the second rep and it feels worse and you're going slower. So that's an indication that, hey, you don't want to beat a dead horse here. You've got to rest, because the way our training plans are set up is that when you have a key day, your body is ready to perform that day, even if it is a little tired. But if you come to a key day and you can't do it, that means that we've overreached somewhere, and we need to dial it back and rest. Otherwise, we're going to go backwards.
So, a problem that I dealt with during my training is I was worried a lot about missing sessions or not being ready to attack the plan completely that you had given me. So I think ideally you wanted me to train 5 days a week, and I was really only able to train 4.5 days a week. So what do you think is worse? And this is something that was always in the back of my head. What do you think is worse for the long-term performance of the athlete? Do you think it's missing sessions or just never backing off and going balls to the wall the whole time?
I think the latter is definitely worse. I think it's better to be more on the cautious side, where you do a little bit less, but what you do is quality. And if you know you can recover from that, then that amount of time that you have, you try to make the most of it. That's going to progress you forward. But if you go the opposite way, whereas we take somebody who's highly motivated, as you were, Cam, in your training, but you're very busy, you're a doctor, you don't have normal hours, and if you had tried to just smash the training no matter what, even though you had limited recovery, I think it might work for a few weeks, but then after a while you physically go backwards and mentally, and it's just going to be miserable, you know. So that just destroys consistency, and in the end, consistency is really what makes the difference. If you can do something consistent over a long period of time, that's what's going to make you know that performance come about.
One of the things that I talk to endurance athletes about, because I do see a lot of track athletes, is that the deconditioning or detraining because they're pushing too hard and they're not taking those recovery days where they might need to just get some rolling in and try to work their muscle tissue, get some massage, work on some mobility. Is that something you try to hit home with your athletes when training them? Is that it's okay to be able to do that? And if you can only train 3 days this week, it's okay. Next week, we'll pick it up and see how you do moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. And I think with all my athletes, we definitely want to have scheduled recovery built in, because that also helps them when it comes to, the hard sessions. They know, like, okay, I've got this hard day today, but I've got a recovery day around the corner. And so let's just nail this and then I'm going to rest up. And I think if you don't have that scheduled recovery in there, then it's almost like, you're just like a chicken with your head cut off. Like you're just trying to smash yourself with no end in sight, and nobody can handle that for a long period of time.
When we talk recovery, how do you use recovery to its advantage? Is it sleep? Is it nutrition? Is it getting physical therapy? Is it cupping, dry needling? Like, what does part of that look like for you, one, when you were a pro athlete, but also for your athletes you're training?
Yeah, for me, a huge thing was sleep for sure. And I always say to people, like, you have to kind of imagine that you have a sleep tank, and it's like a gas tank. Like, not every day is going to be ideal sleep, and that doesn't mean you can't train that day, but you just got to be aware that, hey, my sleep tank is low. I've definitely got to catch up, because you're going to go backwards. And so I was just always real sensitive to that. And I think in the peak of my training, I was really prioritizing, sleep. Like sleep, I think there's been some studies done that, even, your hormones are released when you sleep, growth hormone, and it just kind of, it's like natural doping almost. So that was a big one for me. I definitely always was a big advocate of a lot of stretching and mobility outside of sessions. I kind of got into a habit of every evening before I go to bed, just try to get a really good stretch in, just to kind of be on top of any injuries that could happen. And I found that really, really kind of helped keep me, healthier. And then, yeah, when there was when I had the finances and the time, I'd get massages and things of that nature. But I just, a lot of the times it was just me trying to do the right things outside of training. Nutrition was huge as well.
So, Lucas, when you were training with top level athletes like Richard Vargas or Lionel Sanders, professional triathlete, what are some things you picked up from them when you developed relationships while training?
One thing those top guys do is that they really, not only do they train incredibly hard, but they do really pay attention to, quote unquote, all the right things outside of training. They're getting their rest, they're watching their nutrition. And when you're a triathlete, that doesn't mean like eating clean all the time. It's more about watching your protein and carb intake and being really sensitive to that. People are surprised that, you'll see pro triathletes just smashing on burgers and fries, but they can do that when they're burning 6,000 calories a day. The main thing is to make sure that that protein and carbs is coming in. And, things that what really kind of set the world class guys apart is that they trained so consistent, and they had built up such a base volume of intense workouts that they could achieve, that they first mentally were like, I'm going to do this to be the best in the world, but then they put it into play, and they do crazy workouts. Like, I mean, I never trained with Christian Blumenfeld, but he's number one in Ironman, and Olympic gold medalist, and I'd raced with him quite a bit. But like some of the sessions that he used to do, he was doing like 4 times 10K on the track, running like 32-minute 10Ks, and it's just like, if you can build up to a point where you can achieve sessions like that, like, you're going to be really good, and that's a common theme I saw with working with these guys. When I trained with Lionel, he'd do crazy sessions like that on the bike, where he was just, it was just stuff that, you would think was not possible, but then after you see those guys doing it, then you try it and you're like, wait, I can do this session. Maybe I didn't perform as well as Lionel did, but I can do that session. And then it has a huge impact on your performance as well. So I think just seeing what those guys did and what the human body's capable of is something that opened up my eyes a lot.
Let's talk nutrition.
Sure.
So you talked a lot about different types of nutrition that professional triathletes can consume. What are some of your go-to meals and things that have worked for you in the past? And you have to include your Eggo waffles, which are famous from your swimming YouTube videos.
Yeah, so my personal go-to meal after a hard day is always my favorite was a steak. I just found that I really perform well, recover well after I eat a steak, and with that steak, I'd have it. Maybe it's not classic to eat with a steak, but I always like to eat rice. For me, I feel like rice is really a high quality carb, and I always felt really good after I ate rice. So I had rice with my steak and then maybe some asparagus to kind of just balance things out. And that was kind of my classic go-to recovery meal. But, after sessions, you have to get quick recovery in. And I'd always have a protein shake with, at least 30 grams of protein with, like 50 plus grams of carbs, something that I could just knock back immediately. And, you'd be if at night if I didn't get if I felt like I didn't get enough protein during the day in my normal meals, then I'd knock down a protein shake right before I go to bed at night, just to kind of make sure everything was topped up. So I think the big thing is just being sensitive to hey, did I get enough protein today? Did I get enough carbs today? Because in endurance sports, you're running off of that glycogen, and if you don't have carbs in your system, it's like that is like you just can't perform.
What are you eating before your training sessions?
Before my sessions, yeah, I'll hit up an Eggo waffle before a swim in the morning, and just pop it in the toaster, put a little bit of butter and honey on it, and that'd be something classic that I eat before a swim. I find that I eat that maybe 45 minutes before I jump in the water and drink it. Wash it down with some water, or actually, I like black tea in the morning, and then I'd feel good in my swim, a little something. And then afterwards is when I'd have my real breakfast. I have eggs and oatmeal and the classic stuff that you eat for breakfast. But yeah, that was kind of a go-to, those Eggo waffles.
Is there any fast acting carbs that you would hit if you needed to real quick? Like if you didn't have the time, like, listen, I got to get on this run. I got to go right now. Is there something that you would go to, or anything that any of your teammates or other athletes you worked with went to that was helpful?
You know what? This might sound kind of weird, but like if I had limited time and I was coming, I was really rushed, but I know I needed to get something in because I was about to run like 10 miles or something, or even an intense track workout, what I do is I'd grab a handful of jumbo marshmallows and eat that. You know, I'd eat the marshmallows because they'd be easy to digest and there's lots of carbs in there. And I'd actually find that would help fuel me through like a 10-mile run. And it's not about having like a real meal before you exercise. That's what you eat afterwards, but it's just something to kind of keep those blood sugar levels up and easy carbs in to get through the workout.
That's a great answer.
Eat more marshmallows.
Yeah, marshmallows.
Jumbo ones.
Jumbo marshmallows.
Now, for measuring of the nutritional piece is tough for a lot of people. What are the easiest ways for somebody that might be listening to say, hey, listen, like I have a really hard time measuring my protein and my carbs. Like people use apps, they use AI
Mhm.
now. Like what's the easiest method for them to be able to get what they need, or what you would help coach them with?
Well, like, there's those apps out there for sure. And some people prefer to have those exact numbers. Whereas with me, I just kind of have a general, uh, knowledge of maybe how much something, how many grams maybe in a certain thing of protein or carbs. And I think that's kind of key is that you need to kind of teach yourself that, hey, this slab of steak right here probably has, 35 grams of protein. Or if I eat this grilled chicken, that probably has about 30 grams of protein, or if I eat this amount of rice, that's about, 50 grams of carbs. You just kind of have to learn that baseline, and then you kind of just know. And, you get a can of tuna, you see how much protein is on that. You just kind of have that general knowledge. You're in the ballpark, and you know what foods have protein, what doesn't. And I think once you have that general knowledge of what does and what doesn't, then that really helps you.
Outside of protein shakes, did you ever take any other supplements that you think were pretty helpful for either your training or recovery?
Yeah, outside of that, like I think because you train so hard, it's not maybe completely natural to train that much, so you need to give your body some vitamins and things. With endurance athletes, especially women, they can become iron deficient really easily, but men can too if they're running a lot. And I think I found that, and I became iron deficient when I wasn't aware of it. That I needed to make sure that at least every other day I was taking a multivitamin that had at least 10 or 11 grams of iron in it. I don't feel like I needed that every day, but I think I advise that all men and women who do this kind of sport, that they need to be sensitive to their iron levels. I found taking vitamin D just really helps keep you healthy, especially in the wintertime, where you don't get a lot of sun. Then or at least where most people don't get a lot of sun in the winter. Taking vitamin D helps keep you healthy, and then the classic, vitamin C is good for your immune system. And having magnesium every night before you go to bed. That's something that I do even now. When I don't train as much, I still take magnesium before I go to sleep because it just kind of helps put your muscles back together. So these are kind of the basic vitamins I take. And I went through phases where I take creatine and experiment with those kind of things. But uh, you know, a lot of people have found a lot of benefits from creatine, and I did feel it was good. There's nothing wrong with it, but for me personally, I always kind of felt a little bit bloated on it, so I just preferred not to take it. But maybe I didn't do it long enough.
Yeah. So, Lucas, we already talked about being tired and overtrained. What are some of the early signs of burnout with most athletes, which they ignore?
That's a great question and so important if you're trying to take the sport seriously, endurance sports, that is. I think some of the early signs is that it's kind of a funny one. You feel real irritable, maybe more than usual. Things that don't usually annoy you, and you just real kind of, even you can sense it on yourself that you're just more of a grouch. That usually is tied into early signs of that you physically maybe have gone too far. And then, of course, the easiest one of all to see is performance in training. You just, your usual easy run where you might run at a certain pace. Now you're running 20 seconds slower, but the effort feels the same. Then, of course, if you have sessions where you're trying to really hit intensity and you just can't, those are signs that you need to back it off. And the funny thing is during these periods, you'd think that you're so tired you would sleep better, but you actually sleep worse. You find that you have restless sleep, you just can't relax, and these are all kind of signs of being overreached. And like I said before, when I was in my early 20s and overmotivated, I hit that state quite a bit.
Now, when we talk about sleep and recovery, is there an aid that you use yourself, meaning like how to figure out what your recovery is and your sleep is, meaning like some people, I think you have a Garmin watch on, it looks like. Some people use a
Mhm.
Whoop, some people use Apple Watches. Is there some type of training device or aid that you recommend for an athlete that's training at that level and how they can better maximize that recovery using those tools?
Yeah, definitely. Nowadays, exactly. You can use a Whoop or an Aura ring, or there's other rings that can monitor your vitals, and I guess the biggest of which that can kind of tell you if your body's ready to go or not is your HRV. The heart rate variability, and I definitely watch that with my athletes who have devices that can monitor that. And I've had the blessing of working with few elite athletes, and one of which, the most maybe highest level athlete that I've ever worked with, is my wife. She was a former professional runner, and she was top 5 in the world in duathlon at one point. And when I was training her several years back, she was monitoring her HRV, and we definitely knew that when the zones where we could really go for it and where we needed to back off. And that wasn't always possible. In the early days of my training, it was just all about how you felt. But nowadays, it's a lot easier to see if somebody's going the wrong way quick.
Yeah, that's a great answer because I know that a lot of people now are using that. I use a Whoop and I check my HRV, and you can kind of feel when, hey, I might be getting sick when there's
Hmm.
a change in your HRV, or hey, I'm going to really be able to train well today. And it's a great metric to use. If anything, that's probably the key one.
Yeah, no, I think it can really, really give you insight into what's going on. I think it's really good for when you race. Like sometimes people, yeah, they'll have a race where they just don't understand why they didn't perform well. Maybe they had some underlying bug or virus, and that HRV will definitely show you that something was going on, even though you thought you felt okay, but in reality, the body was dealing with something. And I think that's been one of the biggest benefits of it.
What do you think the hardest leg of the triathlon is for the majority of the athletes that you coach?
I think a lot of the athletes I work with, and it's kind of typical in the triathlon world, is they find the swim really hard, even though it's the shortest leg. A lot of people have a lot of anxiety about the swim. And so I think if somebody can swim and they want to do triathlon and they've already kind of got a step ahead of a lot of people. But then I personally think, people, when you tell people that you've done Ironmans and stuff, that, the only reason I think an Ironman is actually hard is because of the run. A marathon itself is an amazing achievement. And when you're doing that at the end of a Ironman race, that's really what makes it a hard thing, because you cycle for hours and hours, but you're sitting down. You can, if you need to coast a little bit, you can, but on that marathon, there's nowhere to hide. So I personally would say the run is probably the hardest.
Yeah. So, Lucas, with the increase in the use of artificial intelligence, what are your thoughts on AI or ChatGPT or Grok generated workout training plans or marathon or triathlon training plans versus having one specifically curated by a professional like yourself?
I think it's amazing what ChatGPT and all those AI tools can do and advise, but I think it's really important that you kind of have some knowledge to go with that, because anybody who's worked with the AI stuff, you know that it makes mistakes, and if you know how to prompt it better, the better answer you'll get. But a lot of people just don't know how to tell it exactly what they need and where they are at. And even if they do that perfectly, it might, it could actually spew out something pretty good, but that person needs to have the knowledge of what good training looks like to kind of use that information wisely, if that makes sense.
I'll tell you two ChatGPT stories. So, when I was training, I would take pictures of all my food, and
Mhm.
ChatGPT knew I was training for the half-Ironman. And I would ask if it was good Ironman fuel. And the majority of the time it was pretty reasonable. But then I started taking pictures of like pizza and cupcakes and stuff like that. And as you know, ChatGPT tries to make you happy. So
Yeah.
he would spin it in a way that this piece of pizza is good Ironman fuel because the cheese has protein and the crust has carbs and all this kind of stuff. So it's like you could just eat pizza and cupcakes and be a professional triathlete. And then I put all my bike numbers, my FTP and my watts per kilogram into ChatGPT. And he told me I was a competitive cyclist for someone with a very demanding job. So it was kind of like a backhanded compliment, but he was trying to pump me up no matter what.
It's
Great.
amazing how positive it can. You know what? I finally figured out that if I want real answers from ChatGPT, I have to tell it, like, you need to be brutally honest with me and give me, it calls it A1 mode. I don't know if you guys have found A1 mode, and then I ask it stuff and it's like, no, this is it's like, if I'm like, finally an honest answer.
So Lukas Siska will never be replaced by ChatGPT.
I hope not.
I don't think so
Definitely
either.
not. All right.
I think we need to go into lightning round. That's
We have a lightning round.
We have a lightning round.
Okay, quick answers, huh?
Quick hitters.
All right.
What's the most underrated recovery tool?
I would have to say sleep.
I like it.
We all love sleep here.
Yeah.
What's the top mistake you see among all levels of athletes that you're training?
Top mistake, I would say, is a lack of consistency. if you're consistent, even if you have a bad plan, you can get somewhere. But if you don't have consistency, you can't do anything.
What cool trends should athletes be skeptical of?
Massage guns.
That's a great answer.
I have athletes that lay on the massage gun for like a half. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, tell us more. What do you think about massage guns?
I think they feel good, but I don't know if they're really helping all that much.
I'd rather have somebody get on a full roller for 90 seconds per muscle group and get off it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there.
Yeah.
What's a boring training habit that produces the biggest results?
You know what? I think just showing up every day. Again, I guess that just goes back to consistency. Just some days you don't feel like it, but you just do it, you know? You don't give yourself the option not to. That produces results.
Something I found when I was training for the swim, even if you grew up swimming and you know how to swim, there's so much technique involved to shortening your time and becoming a faster, more efficient swimmer.
hmm
So what's a top tip for people who are trying to drop their times in the swim? Maybe a technique tip or something that you've noticed among your athletes that would help all aspiring swimmers?
I think one of the biggest things, and I hark about this on my channel all the time, and that is that if you just fix your body position and in swimming, if you just focus on being extended as much as you can and stretched out in every motion of your stroke, your swim will feel so much easier because you become buoyant that way.
I have one last question for me. What is a simple fit trick for somebody that is a cyclist? Like how to fit perfectly on the bike. What's the easiest thing for them to do to adjust their fit?
I think if they're sitting on the saddle and they get their pedals in horizontal position. And if you see that your knee is not lined up with the balls of your feet, then your fit's off. So that's kind of the starting point. If you can kind of line that position up, you're in a good spot to at least pushing good power on your bike.
That was going to be my follow up. Is that what's going to produce the most power when you're on the bike?
Yeah, it also depends the type of cycling that you do. In triathlon, triathletes tend to have their cleats pushed back as much as possible to kind of save for the run. But you just really want to bring in all the big muscles of your leg to produce the power. And if you feel like you're pedaling in such a way where, you feel only your quads, for example, then you're definitely losing power. You want to make sure you feel that butt and quads and hams and everything at the same time.
So I ride the Peloton. I like cycling. I'll get out and mountain bike every once in a while, but I train the most with one of the instructors, Matt Wilpers, he was a cross country runner, track athlete in college, and he became a triathlete. The one thing I learned from him that I love the most to make myself feel balanced is the single leg pedal to warm up. Like
hmm
get each leg to work independently at resistance, and I feel like that helps me to stay balanced. Are there any tricks to your coaching style that would help somebody feel more balanced if they felt off on the bike?
I think that single leg pedaling is a great way because you have to really go through the whole circular motion and put that power in. But nowadays you got pedals that are measuring power and you can have power on both sides and you can see if it'll tell you the exact percentage of what power you're doing on your left in regards to your right. Those are cool tools. But I agree with you that single leg is really one of the best things to do to make sure you have even power.
Last question from me. What are your thoughts on the super cushioned running shoes?
Like the super shoes.
Yeah, the bouncy ones that you see everyone wearing at the marathons.
Oh, well, I love them. I love them. I think once you go carbon shoe, you just don't go back, and they protect your legs. If you train in them, that I think you can get injured less because they kind of just they absorb a lot of the shock that the run has, and they feel fantastic when you race. So I love them.
What shoe would you tell somebody not to buy? What shoe?
Not in regards to
Brand.
racing.
I would say brand shoe,
Oh,
training
we're going to
shoe.
throw brands under the bus.
Should we
Nice.
throw brands on? I would. I
Sure,
tell
go
kids all
for
the
it.
time not to buy.
Send
I'm
it.
going to say I
That's a tough one because I think everybody has such a different foot, you know, where, one brand might feel great to you, but feel like garbage to somebody else. For example, I know that Asics feels good to a lot of people, and there's a lot of elite runners that run in Asics, but there's certain shoes that Asics models that don't feel good to me, but then they feel great to somebody else. So it depends on, are you a pronator? Are you a supinator? It just, you know what I mean? So some brands are just better for others there's not one that's better than every other one.
Very well played.
So I got to give a shout out to Lukas, not only as a professional triathlete, but as an amazing coach. His coaching is Siska Systems, and he has a YouTube channel with over 33,000 followers. It's Siska Training Systems, videos on swim instruction, triathlon instruction. I watched a ton of his videos when I was training. They were super helpful for any aspiring marathoners, swimmers, cyclists, triathletes. Siska Training Systems is the way to go. He's a great guy. He's the guy who recommends eating asparagus and then peeing yourself on the triathlon path.
And eating waffles before.
And take that to heart. But Lukas, we really appreciate your time. You're the man. I really appreciate all the time you put into helping me, accomplish my goal and everything you're doing for all the other athletes. It's awesome to see.
Oh, thank you, Cameron. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure being here.
Hey, Lukas, thanks again. And if I ever decide to become an elite athlete, I will call you.
Good. I'll be waiting for that call.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks, man. Thanks for listening to Behind the Sports Medicine Podcast. Follow us on social media and check out our website.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult a licensed healthcare provider for guidance related to your specific situation. We'll see you next week.